Hey everybody, welcome to our channel. In this video and this video series, we're going to be discussing all of our juicy theories and the details of Presumed Innocent episode by episode from Apple TV, and we're really excited to get into it. We also have a podcast called Men Search for Meaning, where we chat about and explore all kinds of relatable concepts and facts of life. So if you enjoy the discussion, then subscribe and be sure to check out some of our other videos on the channel as well. Episode one was pretty interesting. Oftentimes, with that first episode, it's hard to know stylistically how much they're going to give you. And I think most shows now have a similar setup where they draw you in a little bit with intrigue, and then they leave you with that kind of big cliffhanger to keep, so the pilot really converts you into the rest of the season. And I feel like this first episode did that well. We have a couple different pairs of people, Nico and Tommy, as well as Raymond and Rusty, kind of these two opposing pairs in what seems like a very stressful work environment, at least from my perspective. And then we see a bit of Rusty's family, and there's a little bit of tension that can be picked up early on, and then it kind of unfolds why that is. So I'm curious what stood out most to you in this, or what do you think is most interesting? Because I'm very excited to delve into this and see what we find.
I think the revelations that happened at the end
Yeah.
were most intriguing to me about Rusty's potential or his definite affair with Carolyn,
Yeah.
and B, his wife's attitude towards that. She kind of
Yeah.
has like a really strong attitude towards that. Like I could stay, I could go, but I value
Yeah.
our family and I love you, so I'm with you. I mean that I think had the most depth and
Yeah.
dimensionality to it as a subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His wife is walking a very fine line between um, being bothered by the affair and really genuinely being in those feelings. Like she clearly conveys, she almost didn't get through this. She's very present in the pain caused with that. However, she's able to be supportive and affectionate at the same time, which is a really interesting balance. There's multiple moments, like we don't know as the episode is starting what the dynamic is between them or what has come up. It's at the end of the episode that we find out, all right, there's been an affair here with a coworker, and it seems like she describes it as surviving that or something, barely getting through that. And we're also seeing her, apologizing that the district attorney election didn't go the way he wanted it to, and being physically affectionate. And I found it so interesting because I think people tend to occupy either one of those sides or the other. They're very present in their hurt and they're wanting to be validated in that, or they're kind of ignoring those feelings and being affectionate. But she's really got one foot in each camp there, and it's sort of a fascinating character to watch for that reason.
Yeah, she's almost too mature.
Yeah.
I can imagine getting there, likely always with some degree of hurt. I feel like that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
something you come back from. But I don't know how recent the affair was. I mean, if the cliffhanger at the end of the episode is, leading us in the right direction, then if she was pregnant but not apparently so, it would mean that they slept together sometime in the last like 5, 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's possible that it was fairly recent. And if that's the case, I would have a lot of trouble believing she's come to a place of dignified maturity that she seems to be coming from.
Yeah, it's hard
So,
to fully understand her motivations, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more about that. We'll get right back to the video, but first we want to remind you that if you're enjoying the discussion, to please hit that like and subscribe button, and also to check out our podcast, Men Search for Meaning, on this same channel, where we explore and get into all kinds of relatable things about life. So if you want to spend some more time with us, check out those episodes too after this one, and let's get back to it. That's the first episode. I think we should get some first episode predictions going on, that we can see how they age as we get further into the series. But basically they set up this possibility that there's this guy, jail, Liam Reynolds, that was found guilty by a jury for killing Bunny something, I forget what her name was, and the aspects of that murder were similar to what was true for Carolyn. And so they're setting up this possibility that either he was wrongfully convicted and the killer is still out there, or the possibility that he is the killer of Bunny and that he has, propositioned someone, or somehow got someone on the outside to do the same to Carolyn. And he made it very clear that he thinks I think highly of her. He mentioned in the interview in the prison that he would happily cave her skull in. And a scene that I found really interesting that I wanted to make sure we talked about was, once he was found guilty, he said, there's two things about me I never forget. Actually, I don't remember what he said exactly, but he said something like, uh,
Well,
I
he said,
never
"I never
forget.
forget faces, and I never forget being fucked over."
Exactly, yeah. Which I found so interesting. The faces thing makes perfect sense, but he's accusing her of fucking him over. In a way, makes it sound like he did not murder Bunny. Because
Mhm.
how can you be guilty of the crime and accuse the justice you've been handed down as being fucked over, unless you just have this kind of insane expectation that no matter what you do, no one will stop you and you should always be free. But him categorizing that as being fucked over, I thought was very interesting, because I think what seems to be a clear theme as this unfolds is, did he actually do it? They paint him as this kind of rough around the edge, reject from society, maybe, in a sense, which to me seems guilty. And it seems like that was the result, or I mean, that was clearly the result of the trial as well. But yeah, just that, did that line stand out to you in the same way, of him accusing her of fucking him over? Or do you
Yeah,
think
I
there's the
was
possibility that she knows more than came out in the trial? Like somehow she knows a bit more than she's supposed to. And I don't know. I'm just trying to think if there's another angle to the being fucked over. Like he thought they had some kind of understanding, and this trial proved otherwise. But that line just sits weird for me as him being the guilty
I
party.
really like that. I didn't think about that, but I now that you said that, I kind of believe that because let's
Which
just
part?
say I believe that they had something else going on that we don't understand at this point in the first episode that he classifies as fucking him over, which is not
Interesting.
just doing her job and convicting him,
Yeah.
because he really acted like a murderer during that questioning. Like
Yeah.
he talked about murdering, talked about caving in her skull, like you said. He really didn't act like a guy that's like, hey, I'm innocent, so yeah, I really hate her, but I'm not a murderer, so I wouldn't have murdered her just like I didn't murder Bunny. Like nothing like that happened. He acted like a psychopath would act.
Yeah.
So I certainly was led, if the show's writers were meaning to lead me in the direction that he's definitely a murderer, they did that successfully by the way he was talking. But then when he
Yeah.
said that she fucked me over, that did confuse me, and I never
Yeah.
resolved it. But your suggestion is a good one. That may be the way to resolve that contradiction.
Yeah. And that would be fascinating. I enjoy, this isn't a mystery, but in a way it is. Like, it's not your typical mystery show, but there clearly is a mystery here that they're unfolding piece by
Oh
piece.
yeah.
And I really do enjoy that genre. And I think there's different ways to approach how you reveal things. And the most common, I would say, is that characters themselves and the relationships between them deepen, in that they keep peeling back these individual layers. We see a bit more and a bit more, and then what we saw at the beginning and what we see at the end has this this enormous difference in depth, where it's like, oh, maybe like he's her father or something like that. And I mean, I'm just totally pulling this out of thin air, but it's like he's her father, and she understood what he was doing and thought that the understanding was that she was going to leave him alone, kind of. And now here she is trying to make a name for herself, using this as a case. Maybe she chooses this because it's an easy win for her, because she knows he's guilty and she can make a name for herself. They mentioned that she had political aspirations of her own. And so that's the kind of thing that can happen, where there's no way to know that at the beginning. And as they peel these layers back, which hopefully they do so in a way that's very interesting, and even if, um, well, it's very interesting, keeps you captivated as it's happening, and then by the end you're like, holy crap, what a journey this has been. And never could have guessed this as the outcome, unless I just happened to guess it right there, but I don't think so.
That's very interesting. Something I keep returning to on the affair. I don't know if you were intrigued by the conversation with the psychologist because I kept thinking, and this is
Yeah,
with Rusty's affair with Carolyn.
yeah,
Um, I was intrigued by why he had an affair. It seems
yeah,
like he has a good family life. I mean, everything in the show indicates that Barbara is a good wife. I don't know. He seems dedicated to his family. He's playing ball with his kids. He's a little harsh, but other than that, seems
yeah.
like a good family life. But like, why would that happen? And the reason given, I was very focused on this, was that he was attracted to Carolyn in that she was very very direct and very physical, but his actual reason is that he and Barbara, his wife, were just all business. That's all he says. Oh, we were just all business, and then this was simpler. It had this like simple sexiness to it where they didn't have
Hmm.
to have all the complications of the marriage and their history and the
Hmm.
kids and all the chores and stuff, which is plausible enough, but not enough for an affair. I don't buy that. That's just one dimension. There needs to be more than that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm reading into it too much, but in my view, that's not enough for an affair.
Something, yeah, I see what you're saying. Something else they mentioned that stands out to me in this context was him saying that him and got together at like age 20. So it seemed like
Uh,
that also started out as sort of a physical relationship that then um, evolved into a relationship maybe quickly or more suddenly than anyone was anticipating. So that's another piece, is that, sometimes it can be the case for people who in their own minds settle down too early, that they feel something is missing, or they haven't had the, opportunity to do other things. And so this could be some of that, but show a very passionate affair in the scenes that they're disclosing, and how much he's fixated on her even in her death, and all these different scenes in different rooms and different places of them um, being intimate with each other. And so yeah, there does seem to be some dimensionality there, more than just the physicality of it, because they seem to really have a strong connection. And they chose to show us that scene where they're sitting in the diner or whatever, and she's like, oh, I miss the older days where when someone was interested in another person, they could just or physically touch him. And she grabs his crotch in that moment. So it's all that he admires that very forward um, approach that she has. But I think, like you're saying, there have to be more pieces to it. It can't just be any one of these things. And I'm confident that as these episodes unfold, we're going to see a lot of information there that brings out that additional context that just isn't possible to know, at this point.
yes, you're probably right about that. And this makes me think about the ending scene where they kind of reveal. Tommy seems to indicate that he knows that the romantic entanglement occurred. And
Yeah.
the thing that I was so confused by is, why does Rusty lie about that to like a prosecutor? That's such a crazy thing to do.
Yeah. My take on that was because it's still an informal context. Like, he's so versed with how these things progress that this is still kind of like a gentleman's conversation, so to speak, where this isn't on the record specifically. It's not explicitly off the record. But I think he's just is very caught by surprise. And I even picked up on a little bit of Tommy kind of taunting him, a way
Yeah.
that you could never pin him down on. But, he seems, there's clearly a rivalry between them. They've made it clear that Rusty is the better lawyer of the two. So perhaps we're going to see a squaring off of these two. And they've positioned Rusty as the likely winner, but we'll have to see where that goes. Um, Feels like from the moment they called that meeting, which I interpreted it to be changing of the guard, kind of, they have to go through the logistical stuff of, Nico can say, hey, Raymond, thanks for running a great race. Raymond can say, oh, fuck you, and then they
Mhm.
can make Tommy the new deputy prosecutor or whatever. So there's some like logistical things, but then they just sneakily shoehorn this like, hey, so are you the father of Carolyn's dead baby? And it's like they didn't go right to
Yeah, yeah,
that, but
yeah.
it's like I think they knew the entire time they were going to get to that, because the whole the whole lawyer way of speaking is like, where you're trying to go. You're trying to set someone up, paint them into a corner before they realize you're doing it, and then boom, they're caught. So that was a really interesting scene. For me, it was foreshadowing of how these relationships are going to continue to interact, because there's clearly some tension and has been from the get-go, and now the stakes are increasing exponentially, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the ending, but was really struck by how much the stakes ratcheted up from that, sort of resentful meeting that was almost like an afterthought to like, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? I may not have a job anymore. Let me just do
Yeah.
this last meeting and congratulate these assholes.
Yeah,
To, like you said,
we're
we're just having a
investigating
little
you.
chat. Right. But I mean, I picked up on that, I guess, because I'm thinking like everybody's a suspect right away.
Yeah,
But I would think he would know that he is, potentially a suspect just because he knows he had an affair with Carolyn.
yeah,
Maybe he doesn't think he is, but there's the possibility. So when they start questioning him, the idea that he would lie, um, just inculcates him in the whole thing. I,
yeah,
I feel like that was a huge error. If he wasn't a suspect before, he is now. And
yeah.
I'm like, man, what are you doing? And then a part of me is just confused by the idea that she was pregnant. I'm like, is Tommy potentially lying about that? Because it couldn't be
Mm,
that she was less than 6 months pregnant. I mean, you're showing after 6 months for sure. Um, and I just didn't notice that she wasn't very pregnant, from what I could tell, or everybody would have talked about it when she was murdered. So
yeah.
it makes me think, okay, so the affair was fairly recent. So why is his wife talking about it like, a survivor that's gone through that? So I'm just confused about
Mm,
that.
yeah. My take on the pregnancy thing was she was maybe like a month pregnant. For some reason, I interpreted it as being very recent, but that is interesting
Right, right.
what you're pointing out about the juxtaposition between that information and the information we're getting from Barbara about this potentially being something from months ago that she's already been processing a lot. So, yeah,
Hmm.
that will probably need to be um, solved. But yeah, I'm very excited to see where this goes. It's hard to say too much about the first episode because it's just putting the tablecloth on the table before you even set the
Yeah,
table,
yeah.
before you even serve the food. So gives you a little bit
Hmm.
of indication where things are going, and stylistically what can be expected. And based on that, I'm really excited, and the way they're leveraging these personalities against each other and just creating such interesting characters already without that much depth. I'm really looking forward to the next episodes. Any final thoughts you want to add in before we wrap this one up?
I don't think so. I love your analogy with the tablecloth. It's true. There's not too much we can say yet. Like, I want to go deep into it, but I just don't know. Like, almost anything's a possibility at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll probably be making these next episodes a bit longer because there's going to be more and more to sink our teeth into as it gets
Hmm.
going. So, if you're a fan of the show watching this and you want to hear more of this discussion, subscribe, hit the like button, let us know your thoughts below. We really want to hear from you guys. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we do have a podcast called Men's Search for Meaning, where we talk about more relatable life concepts, not things based around TV shows or things like that. So, if you enjoy our perspectives and the way we discuss things, check those out as well because we think you'll enjoy them. So thanks for watching, and we'll hope to see you in the next episode.